Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream from the INLearning Partnership. I'm Lena Darnay. I am the Director of Professional Learning for Keep Indiana Learning, and we're so thrilled to have you join us. The INLearning Partnership is a collaboration with the Indiana Department of Education, the Learning Lab, and 5-Star Technology, and Keep Indiana Learning. And we work to bring educators' voice loud and proud into the conversation across Indiana. And we're thrilled to have Julia Crone from Plainfield to join us today for our Spring Forward event. Today, we're talking about future-ready student supports, and the student tech teams at Plainfield are so fantastic. Julia, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to turn it over to you because you've got some amazing things to share about those student tech teams.
That's right. So we actually have student tech teams at Plainfield Community Middle School, and we call them our tech squad. So today what I'm going to be talking to you about is kind of planning and implementing. Maybe you are wanting to start a student tech team, or maybe you have them and you're looking to revamp. I do have the QR code if you wanted to scan this, or it's going to be in the notes on YouTube on getting the slide deck. So like I said, my name is Julia Crone. I'm actually our tech integration specialist now in Plainfield Schools, but I was our Idea Lab facilitator, which is our makerspace at the Plainfield Community Middle School for almost 4 years. And I'm going to dive right in and talk first about my first tip for you is to select a mentor. When we're looking at selecting a mentor, it would be great if they had a strong tech background, but I actually don't think that that's completely necessary. I think somebody who is not afraid to learn and learn among students. When I first became our director of our makerspace, I had never used a 3D printer. I'd never flown a drone. I'd never done green screen. And I had to learn that alongside students. You want a mentor that has a flexible schedule. So where they're going to be able to check in with these students. Is it all going to be one period? Like, are you going to host it in like a second period, or does it work better to have them throughout the day? The way that we had our tech teams were all throughout the day, every single period, and we had somewhere from 3 to 5 tech students. And then so a teacher needs to be able to have a flexible schedule to not only to meet with them, to check in, to make sure that they're on task, and also creating a curriculum for those students as well. A mentor would be great who is comfortable with student-driven environments. I even know myself, the first time I kind of dove into that, I was used to really the structure of a classroom. And I had some things I had to get used to. At first, I was a little bit too much of like, oh, we have the world in front of us. And I didn't have as much structure as I probably should have in a middle school. So then I had to pull back a little bit like, oh, okay. So my kids who for 3 weeks were doing absolutely awesome, they're middle schoolers. So they started to not be as driven. They're like, oh, I've already done the drone. I've done the green screen. So I found out quickly that I do have to have a lot of structure still inside a student-driven environment as well. And so that just looks a little different depending on what grade level you're working with. And then we love our mentors to be out of the box thinkers because there's so many ways that you can use a tech squad, so many ways you can use a tech team. And so we want our teachers to always be thinking of like, oh, I bet I could involve my tech team. Oh, do you want the tech team in here? Hey, I was thinking about this project. I think you guys would be great at it. Are you interested? So out of the box thinking, always looking for something new and looking to challenge their students. So that's what I find in a mentor to be important in finding a mentor. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. If you don't have a makerspace, this could be done through a librarian. This could be done through the technology department. We actually originally wanted our students to be servicing Chromebooks, like putting keys back on, popping the screens back in. We found out very quickly when school started, actually, like that was our intention with our tech team, but it would null and void our warranty on our Chromebooks. So students weren't allowed to work on them. So then we had to rethink, and we started just having the students, pick up Chromebooks that needed to be worked on, or deliver loaner Chromebooks. And pretty quickly, we got some feedback from students that just wasn't engaging enough. And so instead of having them work with the tech team, and myself. They started mostly a partnership with me, but now they are involved in figuring out what apps to have on the Chromebooks, and then all to all, I'll kind of talk about what it looks like inside the makerspace as well. But I could see this being run in a library, or with different, maybe even teachers throughout the day, depending on like when a prep period falls, or when if a teacher has 6 periods, but there's not enough students, so there's like a fifth period open. This could be done in a pretty cool way, unique to your school and what your school's needs are. So my students were run through the Idea Lab, and this is actually their tech pen, where we locked it, and we would have all of the tech out for the students to be able to tinker with, whether that was the drones or the 3D printing. We had Z-Space computers and Spheros, and our students were the ones who figured out how to use that technology. Now, every once in a while, they'd get kicked out, and they'd be in other parts of the lab, because that's the beautiful part about the space that I have. You can see I have 2 rooms over to the back, and the tech pen is the one that is right over here, is where the tech pen is. And sometimes we would have to kick them out, and they might be in the library, they might be in the technology department, they might be working in the green screen. It's kind of like endless when we think about it. So that step 1 was find a mentor, find what's right for your school. And it might be multiple mentors, or it might be just one person who has a very flexible schedule, or it might be a combination, as we said. Step 2 is to figure out what your curriculum. As I said, we started off with like a clear intention of what Tech Squad was going to be, and we quickly found out that we were not going to lose our warranty on all of our Chromebooks, so we had to quickly rethink what Tech Squad would look like. Some of the most important things that we want to provide for them are real-world opportunities. So does that mean that we're bringing speakers in to talk to these tech students? Are they problem solving alongside of a tech team? Are they working with teachers? I found it great as well. A part of the curriculum is to have a syllabus or a contract with those students. Depending on the age, once again, it needs to be clear what your expectations of them are going to be. Typically, if you're going to have a tech team, there is going to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom, really, of how their hour in Tech Squad really looks like. So then that is another question you have to ask. How are these students going to be held accountable? Are they going to have to turn something in on a Google form or in Google Classroom? When are they checking in? Who are they checking in with? When I was in the Idea Lab, sometimes I would have 2 classes running, and I was in charge of both, to where I would just be able to have my tech squad. They had a QR code that they'd scan in with their badges. I might have made a list of things for them to do, or I might not have. And they then had to move on to the next thing that they knew that they were supposed to do, which was check a Google form that teachers can fill out, whether they needed something laminated, they need something on the Cricut. Maybe they wanted a green screen tutorial, or they maybe need the drone checked out, or maybe they need, we had giant whiteboards that are in the lab. Maybe they need those delivered today. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about, is communicating with our staff for the needs. So students knew they could check that. They knew about helping to maintain the lab with paint, with cleaning, or they might be working on a STEM project, which is teaching others how to fly the drone, teaching others how to use the green screen. So making how-tos and things like that. And then how are we going to train them? I would shut down the lab for the first 2 weeks of school to fully immerse my students in the Idea Lab. And before anybody could even book, or before they even started working with students, or before they started to work with other teachers, there was a training, and it was one-on-one with me. This is what our customer service looks like. Here's where I paint. They had to do little quizzes. I'd show them how to do the green screen. And then there were always student tutorials after the first year of how to do some of the other things as well too. So there might be like, hey, we're doing green screen today. I need you to watch this video. I need you to do these next 3 steps, and then you're going to come back in and you're going to check with me. So creating a curriculum is going to be really important. As I said, at the beginning, I was kind of like, oh, it's going to be like a genius hour and it's going to be amazing. And then, 3 weeks in, the, students were showing up, and I'm like, oh, what are you guys working on? They're like, oh, just my vocabulary for another class. And, it wasn't like that when we had first started. So then I needed to come back. Okay, so they need a little bit more structure in this student-driven environment. So once again, what does that look like when it comes to opportunities for speakers to come in, training for them, and training that they can do for their school as well too. Keep clicking out of this somehow. There we go. And so I just wanted to show you some of the different things that we had in our lab that the students might be in charge of. And it's kind of funny because as we had students, I had students in Tech Squad, they all kind of gravitated to what they loved. I had a student in the other day who is an 8th grader, and he was in for 2 years in Tech Squad. And he came in for a social studies class, and he was like, I'm going to do a green screen. Can you share with me the video? And I was like, dude, you were on Tech Squad for 2 years. Like, you know how to do green screen? He's like, no, Miss Crone, remember I know I learned how to do green screen, but I haven't used it in at least a year. I always was helping teachers out. And I was like, oh my gosh, he was like my big time Google form checker, where he loved to cut out bulletin boards for teachers, designing something on Canva, and then putting it on the Cricut and cutting that out, and or running stuff down. And that was his favorite thing to do. I have some girls who have been in the lab and they weren't interested in the drone. So that's not what they focused on. I had some kids who were so good at giving feedback that I put them on panels, and other students had to present to them. And they were like kings and queens of giving feedback. But I also gave them but like sentence stems, sentence starters whenever it came to feedback. This is what we're kind of looking for. This is what would be appropriate to say to a person. And this is what, warm and cool feedback really looks like. I had others who, whenever we'd get donations in, they lived and died off of making sure that the lab stayed organized. And then I had other friends who they were very drone oriented. They were very 3D printing oriented, and cleaning of the lab was just not in their forte. So that's kind of the beautiful thing. The more different types of options, you don't just have to have the techiest of tech students. You can just have students that are driven, students that are hard workers, and there's so many different things that they can do to help manage a space or manage within a tech team. I think it's really important to find competitions. Last year, I took a team to Next Tech Computer Science for Good. They were one of the finalists and actually got to meet Dr. Jenner as well. They were able to present to a real world audience. NASA always does all sorts of competitions. So sometimes that would be their STEM project, is to enter in a competition. And once again, they would brainstorm. They'd do their brainstorm. They'd come to me, Ms. Crone, this is kind of what our plan is. And then they would continue to work. And then I'd check in with them. Hey, how's it going? Maybe you have your students journal along a part of whatever they're doing, a part of that tech team. And then you can check their journals, or you can have them fill out a Google form to check in with them too. But providing opportunities that are real world for them, that have that they could win. They were so pumped, and it was so awesome to see them at the State House. And then, like I said, I also have stuff that sometimes my kids, they loved helping me break down boxes. My cardboard gets out of control in the space that I'm in. Think outside the box. It doesn't just have to necessarily, we do want our tech team to be doing very techie things. We want them to be flying the drone. My students can do that. But then there's other responsibilities that come with that. I even think about my husband works in agriculture. He doesn't spend every day out in a field. There's all sorts of other things that come along with what goes on in their job. And then get other people along too as you're mentoring these students. And I had students who were very much into the tech end, to where they'd go video. They'd go set up. One of them was my live stream guru, and he would set up live stream for the wrestling, especially during COVID. Whenever we were doing live stream, they were the ones who set up that camera equipment. They were the ones who talked to our athletic director and figured out what the needs were. Okay, we need the camera on Tuesday night. There's wrestling. We'll bring the TV down. We'll have it ready to go. Everything will on. The computer will be ready to go. And they even created this little how-to for our athletic director of how to start the live stream if they weren't able to be there, during a wrestling meet, but they had everything ready to go. So it doesn't just have to necessarily be working on the tech. I'm not going to go through this, but I have it linked. It just what I did for my Tech Squad syllabus. And then their STEM project, like I said, they could do a competition. They might do training modules. They might job shadow one of our people in our tech department. There's a lot of different things that can happen based on the student interest. I didn't even know all the things a student would be doing until, I met them, got to know them, and I'm like, "Oh, you working on the green screen?" And they're like, I think I'd rather do this." I'm like, "Okay, all right, well, let's make the plan for that. Like, what does that look like for that as well too?" Step 3 is recruiting our students. As you heard, I don't think it has to be the techiest of tech students. I think it's fantastic and always a really good idea to have like kids who are good hackers on there, though. So you're going to have like kind of a mixed bag, which is really important for every single hour as they might be working on something. I did add that's a link to an application example that you can open, but establish an application process. I will tell you though, the student and teacher references, I call teachers, and if I didn't have enough sixth graders, like, "Hey, I'm low on sixth graders. Like, who would you suggest for Tech Squad?" And they'd give me a list of 3 to 5 students, and I might call another teacher. And those were always my best students on Tech Squad, the ones who didn't necessarily reach out to be on it, or maybe didn't realize or didn't think it was right for them, but a teacher or another student thought they were right. And it was really powerful to the students that we got that way. I think it's also really important of like, what is their why? What are they wanting to get out of Tech Squad? I definitely have kids who see Tech Squad around the building. They know how mature and how much, I guess, what word is I looking for, responsibility they end up with. And so I have kids like, "Well, I want to do blah, 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 and I want to do blah, 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 blah." And those students might not necessarily be right, because depending on the amount of accountability and check-ins that you have, like I said, there might be sometimes I just look and I give them a peace sign for the day. They know that they've got a journal. There's some sort of thing that we've got to do, but I'm trusting that they are going to Mr. Craney's class and they are dropping off the markers. I'm trusting that they're going to the library and they're setting up for this activity, and that they are going to where they're supposed to do for their tech training, or they're working on flying the drone. There's all sorts of things that when you're recruiting students, think outside the box. And actually, depending on what the job is, I have found that I have had some students where, teachers are like, "Oh, I don't know if you can trust him. I don't know." Sometimes the kids who need it the most are some of the most important kids to give them a chance. So don't shy away from giving some students that might be hard in the classroom. This might be just what they need to have a genius hour, to have that freedom. So don't shy away from kids who are quote unquote like trouble kids. I have had several kids who might have that label on their forehead, and they've been able to rip it off by having a student driven atmosphere. And it's just kind of what they needed. And then step 4 that I have is you need to communicate to staff who's on Tech Squad. I love teachers being able to know, or when I hear feedback from teachers that were like, "Oh, hey, um, can I borrow the 2 green screens? I figured out I have someone in Tech Squad for every single one of my class periods." And so I checked in with each of them, and they're going to help me with as adding to our choice board of green screen being an option, and they're going to help out in the classroom. So they don't have Tech Squad that hour. They're helping out their social studies teacher. They're helping out their English teacher. They're going to do stop motion animation. They're going to show the students how to get that on there, and teachers can learn from students. That's big on the professional development opportunities. I can't tell you how many times teachers have followed up and been like, "Dang, I didn't know that," or "We were struggling with Canva. We made these videos and I didn't even think about putting a Dropbox on Google Classroom, but one of your Tech Squad members was like, hey, this is maybe like a way that you could do it that I've seen Ms. Crone do, or that I've done another class." And they just have this leadership when it comes to tech. Or they might have an idea with app that they're going to be able to go to the technology team, and my Tech Squad have given proposals. This is the reason why this app needs to be available or unblocked. And then they have to learn sometimes where, that's where a technology department might say, well, that's actually for 18 or older. These are the following reasons why it's just not going to be unblocked. And so that's a learning experience as well too. Or even having that conversation about cybersecurity. Well, and I've had my technology technology department, show my tech squad of like, here's 5 articles that I've pulled up that why this is a security risk and why we can't move forward with that. That's powerful learning. That's a conversation that students just before were like, well, why can't we do this? Well, now we have an answer and we know what goes behind things like cybersecurity and other decisions, and it allows our students to be stakeholders in our classrooms. And then, so teachers know the expectation of the role. So if I am sending a kid down with whiteboards, there is an expectation of customer service. If you're working with a teacher, you're working with students, you're delivering something, they're not supposed to then walk around your classroom and be loud and not walk out. It's they're making delivery. Hello, is this an appropriate time if I bring these whiteboards in? We have those conversations because middle schoolers and high schoolers and elementary school students, they don't know what that looks like. So that's the other part of having a mentor and having people around who's in the tech squad. We had to model all that for them. I mean, it was wild to me where I've been like, hey, what did you go do when you went to so-and-so's classroom? And I don't kick them off the tech squad when they make a mistake. I'm like, listen, okay, so here's what happened. What do you think that could have looked like? Okay. So I'm going to tell you this was the teacher's perspective on what happened. You came in, you were loud, you disrupted the learning process. We can't do that. Here are what your options are. Here what it looks like. So, and it wasn't like you didn't get yelled at, you didn't get attention, you didn't get, you had a talking to like, hey, listen, I got to be able to trust you. And we've learned something the hard way, and that is okay. So also having the staff know, and like I said, I also had a Google form where we continue to share out that teachers could say, hey, I need a bulletin board. Could you design this in Canva for me? Or I've already designed it in Canva. Could we print it out on the Cricut? Hey, we're working, the art teacher last year, one of the students loved, she met with my tech squad and was like, I want to have a prize for the students. And they're like, well, we could 3D print for them. And she's like, oh, okay. And it was a Nike shoe design. And my students went on Tinkercad and found a Nike shoe that was like a keychain. And so they made like 15, they 3D printed like 15 prizes for the art class, and created keychains out of these Nike shoes that were 3D printed. And to tell you that they were so excited about that. And then that also led to other opportunities where they found like this octopus that moves, and there was a couple other things. And then they were going to other teachers and being like, hey, for this competition, I could 3D print this for you for your winners. And teachers like, well, yeah, let's do it. That sounds fantastic. And so just involving other teachers, because you might not be able to come up with everything. That was one thing that I loved, where there were days when I had to be like, hey guys, talk to you 3 weeks from now, or I'll check in with you tomorrow. Sorry, really busy today. That they knew then that they were going to check what the other teachers had said. They're going to check in with the tech department. They had a whole list of people that they could check in with. So it takes the village. And that's step 5, that maintain and train. Like I said, there were some things we had to find out the hard way, and that's okay. And I'd sit my tech squad down and I'm like, okay, let's talk about some of the things that we've learned this week. I learned that I have to make sure that I have a little bit more structure for you. I need to keep them engaged, that I need to help them find competitions when we're in middle school, right? I have a list. Here's some of the competitions. I want you to take a look, which one you're interested in, fill out the Google form or check back in with me, leave a Post-it note on my desk. Let me know what you'd like to move forward with. That formal check-in, I'm going to show you actually this. I have a tech squad evaluation. And so I was doing this at the end of every 9 weeks. And I actually started bumping it up to doing it every 3 weeks. And that is just because I had some students who I had to sometimes gently remind, hey, last week there was painting in the lab. You were on the back. I think you were playing on Cool Math. We had a lot of different things that were going on, and you didn't help me in that moment. Or that is also my responsibility, that I go in. I'm like, hey, you remember, let's take a look. I have this tech squad evaluation. Here's the following things that you could be doing right now. Because I was a middle schooler at one point. If you can sit around and hang out a little bit, but if it's engaging, the students are less likely to do that. So formal check-in often, like I said, every 3 weeks is where I went back over formally and checked in with each student. Where are we? Let's look through your journal. I love that you've been doing this. I wonder what's next. And you can give the students a structure to continue moving on. Book intentional training time. Like I said, the first 2 weeks of the Idea Lab were strictly for my students. If somebody canceled in the lab kind of unexpectedly, I used to fill it. Now, sometimes what I'll do is instead I'll be like, you know what, that's actually a perfect day to check in with my tech squad. I'm going to shut down the lab for that day and it's just for tech squad. We're going to check in, we're going to train, we're going to see who can do the green screen, who maybe will fly the drone. It's a good day. I brought in the fire department to teach them how to fly the drone, by the way, too. So bringing in speakers, bringing in people from the community. You don't have to do everything on your own. How powerful is it to have other people come in who know how to 3D print, who know how to fly the drone, who just are, tech people, or even just, people with jobs. Like my husband, like I said, he's an ag and he can literally drive a tractor from our couch. That's how he can program a tractor to drive from our couch. Like we are in 2023, my friends, and our students, we need to meet them for jobs that we have no idea that even exist, right? And then you have to think about too of how long can they be a member. It just kind of depends. I've had students who have been in Tech Squad all 3 years. I have had students who they kind of run their course after 9 weeks. They kind of found it wasn't for them, or I've had to gently. I haven't really had to like fire any students. It's almost like any student that was not meeting the rubric, they also understood because it wasn't like, oh, this is the first I heard that, that I wasn't meeting the rubric. This isn't the first time. I was doing plenty of check-ins and to the where like, yeah, I know, Miss Crown. Like, I think Tech Squad probably isn't totally right for me. I don't think I can handle the responsibility. Or they say, this is how I'm going to do better. And these are the following ways I'm going to improve. So kind of figuring out how that works. I do have this linked as well too. And then I just checked in with some of my previous Tech Squad members, and they reported all the benefits to Tech Squad of STEM education inside our building. They loved doing professional development for teachers, but not everyone liked that though too. Keep that in mind that, as I said, there's going to be students who love working with teachers. And then I have some of my students who are like taking apart my 3D printer and they want to be quiet and that's what they want to tinker with and do during that time, as long as it's a bigger part of their STEM project or like their genius hour. 100% felt like they had the benefit of being a leader, and 81% felt like their student voice was heard within our school community, that they were valued members all throughout our building because they knew that they were members of the Tech Squad and they brought value. They brought in having a conversation about apps, what works, what doesn't work, why can we have this, why can't we have it? All of those are very important parts. So remember, find a mentor. You need to make sure that you are recruiting students, you're creating a curriculum, you're involving the staff, and then finally, you are maintaining and training those students. So if you want to have a conversation, I just had a few linked that I didn't really talk about. I'm right here in Indiana. Like, come visit, come see us. You can come to Plainfield. We're, right in the central part of Indianapolis. You're welcome to come tour the space. You're welcome to have a conversation about Tech Squad, or I'd love to do a video chat with you. Like I said, my name is Julie Crone. I'm a Keep Indiana Learning coach from Plainfield Schools, and hopefully you have some good ideas to move forward with the tech team yourself.
Julia, thank you so much. What an awesome plan for getting your students involved so early, and talk about building employability skills and the college career workforce. I know there's something in my heart that lives still on the AV, rolling around the big TVs and the VCRs when I was in high school and middle school, being in that responsibility group that built a lot of what I still use today, which is that nimble thinking and being able to communicate and think thoughtfully about next steps and how to look at a problem and see all the possible ways to solve it. I just love all of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome seeing the growth in the students, and just a super powerful way that we can have students be better stakeholders in our school and our buildings.
Well, that's fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you to everyone for joining us as part of the INLearning Partnership. You can find out more about the INLearning Partnership by following us on social media at Keep Indiana Learning, at INLearning Lab, and at Educate IN. We're thrilled to have you as part of our learning partners, and we hope that you will join us next time for more from Indiana's INLearning Partnership.